You're listening to The Hour at a Time. I'm Pooh.
And I'm William Cooper.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sweetheart.
You're welcome.
I'll come and tuck you in just a little while and read you your nightly story.
Every time I say you're listening to The Hour at a Time, sometimes I get mixed up, and when I do the Pledge of Allegiance, sometimes I get mixed up too.
But not tonight.
Yeah.
And you only got mixed up a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic record for all the times that you've done this.
Bye.
Bye-bye, hon. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me and others discuss the Bohemian Grove, a place in Northern California where the elite of the elite, but only men, go to rest and relax and camp and tell dirty jokes and get drunk together and burn, care, and hold ancient Celtic ceremonies while the owl watches silently from a tree. They all dress in the black robes and wear the swastika of the ancient Druid or Celtic priesthood. You never really understood it, but it is a men's club of the priesthood of the Druidic rites of what is known as Anglo-Israelism or British Israelism, or in this country they like to call it Christian identity and a few other names, but it all boils down to the same deception. And when I say deception, ladies and gentlemen, it's no joke. You've also been beguiled by Kathy O'Brien's tales of having been taken to the Bohemian Grove and ravaged sexually and used as a sex slave by all of these people, and she is a barefaced, unmitigated, absolute liar. For no women have ever been allowed within the confines of the Bohemian Grove ever in the history of these meetings. And you better understand that. Oh yes, there are plenty of women available. In fact, some of the most beautiful prostitutes, some of the most high-priced call girls from all over the world flock to that area when these famous elite men congregate to pee on the trees in Northern California. But they do not ever enter onto the property of the Bohemian Grove. Instead, if one of those men want a woman, they must leave the Bohemian Grove and go to the nearby town or to any of the many motels or cabins or rental cottages and homes in the area where these women take up their residence. Tonight, I'm going to explain to you what British Israelism, or Anglo-Israelism, or Christian identity, or one of the many other names that is given to this deception is, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what and why, what makes it a deception, and why. Don't go away. And make sure you have pen and pencil by your side, because you don't want to miss one single moment of this. In my book, Behold a Pale Horse, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote of the secret societies and religions and what makes them attractive to certain people. And in most instances, it is the tendering of a secret and the promise that the initiate or the novice can become one of the elect or elite of the world. In this case, a British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism, it is the promise that the novice or the new member of this religion is indeed, by virtue of birth, one of the master race of the world who will inherit the kingdom of God and will create a new heaven and a new earth, and will indeed rule with the coming Messiah up on this earth in the New Jerusalem. They call this, in another phrase, the destiny of America. Destiny of America. Boy, doesn't that make your blood run? Wow, that's exciting. More generally known as British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism. But why not the more fascinating of its names? Why don't they just call it Destiny of America? That holds for the entire North American continent. And by golly, if I called this broadcast the Destiny of America broadcast, this program could appropriately close its broadcast with the one tune that to Canadians means, God save the King, and to Americans, my country 'tis of thee. One program and one melody for Dominion Day on July the 1st and for Independence Day on the 4th of July. And since this is an international broadcast, I could have the Englishmen around the world standing at attention. Except, of course, for the more jaded, and there are many. One glorious, world-saving destiny indeed for all who have at some time or other immigrated to the North American continent. For according to these people, Britain is Ephraim and the United States are Manasseh. And the throne of David is now the British throne. None of you really understood when they showed on television a ceremony being put on for the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, by the members of the Bohemian Grove, when she sat on her throne and they came out with these big, huge hats and danced around her and sang a song that contained the words, "From Babylon to the throne of England." You see, it is nothing more than the disguised mystery religion of Babylon. Only it promises a certain race, they will gain the rulership of the world. Is it any wonder that International Zionism has teamed up with the British oligarchy and American Freemasonry to bring this about? With Mormonism, Anglo-Israelism has in common some wide, off-the-mark, very wild speculations concerning the early inhabitants of America. All false, all phony, all lies. Any archaeologist, any historian will tell you that. And they have nothing against British Israelism or the Mormon Church. It just happens to be true. With Seventh-day Adventism, it has in common that it has some earnest Christians among its ranks, while yet both systems are vicious, ladies and gentlemen. With the early Russellism, it shares the intricate mathematical measurings of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, from which Pastor Russell determined the date of Christ's return, afterward condemned by Rutherford, and Professor G.P. Smith wrote, "Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid." Tom Valentine wrote a great tome on the Great Pyramid. And in an interview with the author of 5/5/2000, Ice, the Ultimate Disaster, Tom Valentine revealed himself as a member of this religion through the Stell Group, a secret society with its roots firmly planted in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry and Mystery of Babylon. On page 1 of the first book of Nephi, which also opens the Book of Mormon, we can read, quote, I, Nephi, make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians, end quote. Not only were the reformed Egyptian characters the product of a deceptive brain, but there never existed such a language in the history of the world, ladies and gentlemen. On page 549 of the Book of Mormon, we read, quote, and it came to pass that I, Mormon, being 11 years old, was carried by my father into the land Zarahemla, the whole face of the land, having been covered with buildings, and the people were as numerous almost as it were the sand of the sea, end quote. Now this boy, Mormon, was one of the last descendants of the godly Nephi, who had left Jerusalem, according to the Mormon religion, in the days of Zedekiah. These Nephites had built a godly civilization during 400 years, but they backslid and were utterly destroyed in 384 AD by the descendants of Ishmael, who had come from Jerusalem with Nephi. Now, Israel's descendants, the black-skinned Lamanites, destroyed all vestiges of civilization in Central America. Mormon and his son Moroni fortunately recorded the entire story on golden plates, which were afterward, of course, hidden in the hill Cumorah in New York, until in 1827 they were revealed by Moroni, who has now become an angel, to Joseph Smith, Jr., the prophet. The Book of Mormon also tells of an earlier settlement in America by the Jaredites, who had come in cigar-shaped boats to America after the confusion of tongues at Babylon. The Book of Mormon insists, ladies and gentlemen, that between the Jaredites and the Nephites, Central America and Mexico lay idle for 600 years, and the land was so desolate that it was named Zarahemla, the land of desolation. According to such famous anthropologists and historians as Bancroft, Baldwin, and others, however, these lands have always had a dense population and a dense growth of vegetation. Its denizens have always been copper-colored, that is, neither white Nephites nor black Lamanites, and they have ever been a very gentle people. Now, when Christians refuse upon scientific grounds to accept these grotesque Mormon ethnological vagaries and fantasies, why should they accept the equally unattested Anglo-Israel fiction, which traces America's white population to the Israelites of Zedekiah's time, because Saxon, spelled S-A-X-O-N, is said to be really Isaacson, spelled I-S-A-A-C-S-O-N in English. In Hebrew, it's a totally different thing altogether. Or son of Isaac, and British is alleged to be really a Hebrew word, derived from Hebrew berith, which means covenant, and ish, which means man, meaning, therefore, they say, the men of the covenant. But if you ask someone well-versed in Hebrew, it means no such thing. At best, writes Dr. M. Weingarten, professor of the Old Testament in Calvin Seminary, if the word British had aught to do with berith and ish, it could not mean men of the covenant, but only, quote, covenant of man, end quote, and that is really the truth of the matter. But besides, ladies and gentlemen, all scholars are agreed, and every seminary student discovers to his grief that the Semitic and Anglo-Saxon tongues have absolutely nothing whatsoever in common. I have been telling you that for years on this broadcast. And so it is. And this is in keeping with the elaborate history, ladies and gentlemen, of the English language at the beginning of Webster's dictionary, and also with the findings of the Oxford Dictionary, written by the greatest scholars of the English language who have ever lived upon the face of this earth. It is the most in-depth study of any language that has ever been conducted. The only resemblance, folks, between Hebrew and English is to be found in a few words that have been taken over from the Old Testament and nothing more. Now, Dr. Albertus Peters of the Western Theological Seminary in Holland, Michigan, reminds us that the Anglo-Israelites have gone to such ridiculous lengths in this matter as to draw even the Japanese within the pale of ancient Israel. And this is what they teach, that the Japanese are the blood race brothers of the Anglo-Israelites. And that is so far beyond the truth of any kind of scientific investigation that it's almost laughable that anyone could buy into this. But that's why they call it religion, ladies and gentlemen, because it's based upon faith and belief, based upon something that someone tells you or something that you read, which you interpret to further an agenda which fulfills your fantasy and creates your version of whatever religion you happen to follow. And don't get me wrong, folks, you have the right to believe whatever you want and worship at whichever altar you wish in this country, and I'm willing to put my life on the line at any time to make sure that you can continue to do that forever. But you see, this particular religion is involved in an effort to destroy the protection of that right for all of us, the Constitution for the United States of America and the Bill of Rights, and bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government which will be ruled by these people. But if you're a member of this religion and you think you're going to be one of the rulers, guess again. It's only going to be a few. And they've spelled out exactly how it's going to be. It's going to be ruled by a council of wise men under a Messiah, the returned Christ, who will be a deception. Won't be Christ at all. And everyone else will be enslaved in this system. They placed the Japanese within this master race. For so they say there's a remarkable similarity between the Japanese word samurai, the name for the old Japanese military caste, and Samaria, the capital of the kingdom of Israel. This is how far these people stretch to make their wildest dreams come true. Not only so, they have even ventured to conclude that since the Hebrew word for a young bullock was Engel, therefore the land of the Anglo-Saxons was called England, and since these Isaac's sons, no doubt, are good Israelites, sacrificed plenty of young bullocks, are Hebrew Engels, therefore England's inhabitants were called John Bulls. I've heard this preached from the pulpit with my own ears, ladies and gentlemen, and some of you have too. For all such palpable nonsense, the movement keeps growing until it now claims some 2 million adherents scattered through many denominations. The biggest pocket of these people in the United States is located in the northwestern states. So what then exactly are the teachings of this bizarre system, and what briefly is the answer to its claims? Well, I'm going to tell you. The theory, you see, is set forth clearly in a 52-page brochure called The Lost Tribes of Israel by a Mr. Reader Harris. The booklet opens with the incredible claim that when in Leviticus 26, God says that disobedient Israel will be punished 7 times more fiercely for your sins, that's in verse 18, and I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins, that's in verse 21, and I will also walk contrary unto you, and I will smite you, even I, 7 times for your sins, that's in verse 28. These words, quote, 7 times more fiercely, end quote, and, quote, 7 times more plagues, end quote, according to these people, do not refer to the intensity of the punishment, but must be understood as referring to time. Quote, a time, end quote, Mr. Harris informs us, quote, is generally taken to mean 360 years, end quote. 7 times would therefore mean 2,500 years. And he says, which if calculated from the captivity of Israel would reach to about the beginning of the 19th century. Now from this strange, and I mean strange, substitution of chronology for multiplication, we are to infer that about the beginning of the 19th century, we may look for the beginning of the end of Israel's afflictions. And so we are told, with this agrees, that just about that time some of God's people were awakened to, quote, as Mr. Harris says, a spirit of inquiry as to the fate of the tribes with regard to their destiny, end quote. But upon examination and thorough study, there was never any lost tribes. Not ever. The next link in the chain of reasoning is that until about 100 years ago, the great fault of Christians has been their refusal to distinguish and separate between Judah and Israel. Quote, the Bible, however, is perfectly plain. When it speaks of Israel in 99 cases out of 100, the 10 tribes are meant, end quote. Judah and Israel always remained distinct after the latter had been carried captive in 721 BC and the former in 588 BC. You see, everybody thinks that Judah and Israel were the same. Not at all. Israel was a separate state. Judah was a separate state. In the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, you all think that King David was the king of Israel? No, he was not. He warred against Israel, conquered Israel, took the people into captivity, and then established himself as king. You didn't know that, did you? But it's true. Upon this distinction, of course, rest all of those modern theories which have identified the lost tribes with the Mormons, or which placed them in Arabia, or identified them with the Nestorians, or again rediscovered them in the Anglo-Saxons. All tall tales, all furthering agendas of some priesthood or other. Before we view the alleged results of these, quote, facts, end quote, which are not facts at all, therefore, let us examine the scriptural data. And when we do, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we find. The Scriptures teach that all 12 tribes were under Babylonian and Persian dominion, and that the restoration was not a restoration of 2 tribes, but of all 12. And so, indeed, it had been predicted. Jeremiah, 7th century BC, chapter 3, verse 18, quote, In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I gave for an inheritance unto your fathers. For Jeremiah had also stated definitely that Judah and Israel were together in Babylon as its fall drew near, and there was no hint at the tribes ever being lost. In Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33, quote, "Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah are oppressed together. Their Redeemer is strong." End quote. Similarly, Isaiah, that's the 8th century, had predicted in chapter 11, verse 12, quote, "And he will set up an ensign for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth." Also for the return of the 10 tribes. In Isaiah chapter 10, verses 20 through 23, and chapter 14, verse 1. Look it up. Two other 8th century prophets were Hosea and Micah. Said Hosea, quote, "And the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and they shall appoint themselves one head, and shall go up from the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel." Chapter 1, verse 11. And Micah's famous Advent message, chapter 5, verse 2, stated that out of Bethlehem in the land of Judah, the ruler of Israel would come forth. Nowhere the arbitrary distinction between post-exilic Judah and Israel, which has given rise to Mormon and British Israel fancies. They're both deceptions. Both spring from the heart of British and American Freemasonry. In harmony with the above, the prophet Daniel prayed for the restoration of all the tribes. See Daniel chapter 9, verses 1, 7, 11, 15, and 18. Don't go away. I'll be right back. The Hour of the Time, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you by Swiss America Trading. If you have never held a $20 gold piece in your hand, or if you're one of the unfortunate who has grown up since 1964 and have never held or seen a real silver dollar. I'm not talking about the silver dollars they've got now, not these Susan B. Anthony things, no. I'm talking about a real silver dollar. The ones that were heavy. The ones that every slot machine in Las Vegas used for coin of the realm. And what really was at one time, and should be, according to the law today, still the coin of the realm, the money of account of the United States of America. If you haven't, you can get some, and you can find out what the fuss is all about. And you can get it from Swiss America Trading. Call them. Tell them that you're a listener to the Hour of the Time. Tell them that William Cooper sent you, and you'll be given red carpet treatment, I guarantee it. They'll take good care of you. Tell them you'd just like to get your hands on a $20 gold piece or a real silver dollar. And if you really care about yourself and your family and all that you've worked for all your life, talk to them about how you can take some of your assets and convert them to real money, lawful money of account of the United States of America. Call 1-800-289-2646 and do it now, ladies and gentlemen. 1-800-289-2646. You know how you tend to procrastinate. I do. Everybody does. It's human nature. So call now. Don't wait. 1-800-289-2646. While you're at it, thank them for sponsoring the Hour of the Time and ask for a current copy of the newsletter. In this religion, ladies and gentlemen, lies the answer why so many Jews are mixed up in the New World Order. why so many are helping to bring it about. It's because, ladies and gentlemen, they are not really Jews at all. Their name is Jewish. Some of them look Jewish, sound Jewish, and even go to synagogue, but they're not Jewish at all. They're secular, humanist, socialists who promulgate the mystery religion, British Israelism, Anglo-Israelism, the destiny of America and Great Britain, because it will bring them the promise of their fathers that they will rule the world. International Zionism is thoroughly entangled in the teachings of British Israelism. Most Zionists are not Jews at all, ladies and gentlemen. They are Christians. Jerry Falwell is a Zionist. The Mormon Church, by definition, is Zionist. Christian identity is Zionist. Don't believe it? Listen to their teachings. And they are all, every one of them, bringing into being the new world order, most of them without even understanding or knowing what it is that they are involved in. You see, when this new world order comes about, real Jews, real Orthodox Jews, and real Christians, and real Islamic fundamentalists will be destroyed by these people, along with all blacks and Hispanics, which they call useless eaters. And the concept of a master race in itself is racism personified in the religion. And anyone who belongs to it is a racist. I don't care what they call themselves, what they call their church, or what kind of words they put it in to hide their venom toward their fellow human beings. I believe in one race, the human race. All of these other things are deceptions which will divide us, enslave us, conquer us, murder us, promulgate the same old chaos, confusion, destruction, wars, etc., 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 for all the future of humanity. No one is going to be raptured, and when Jesus Christ comes, it will not be Jesus Christ. Ezra, consequently, folks, mentions among those who returned men from Bethel and Ai, centers of the idolatrous worship of the northern kingdom. Ezra chapter 2, verse 28. The men of Bethel and Ai, 223. In chapter 2, verse 70. So the priests and the Levites and some of the people dwelt in their cities, and all Israel in their cities. Consequently, Ezra offered a sacrifice for all Israel. Ezra chapter 6, verse 17. And for a sin offering for all Israel, 12 he-goats, according to the number of tribes of Israel. And in verse 21, and the children of Israel that were come again out of the captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from all the filthiness of the nations of the land, to seek Jehovah the God of Israel, did eat. The NT, following in the wake of the old, knows of no lost tribes. Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, NT is just short for New Testament. Paul said, unto which promise our 12 tribes, earnestly seeking God night and day, hope to attain. Acts chapter 26, verse 7. And in case you missed it, let me back up and read again. Ezra chapter 6, verse 17. Listen carefully. And for a sin offering for all Israel, 12 he-goats, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. They were all there together. Anna, the prophetess, was of the tribe of Asher. Luke chapter 2, verse 36. Robert E. Moyer states that the expression, quote, house of Israel, end quote, is used 14 times in the Old Testament before the nation was divided into two kingdoms, while the phrase house of Judah also occurs 4 times before the division. But the British Israelites claim that after the division, these two terms are strictly confined to the two kingdoms respectively. And it just is not true. Why then? If according to this theory, only descendants of the two tribes returned, did Jesus say that his disciples should enter neither into homes of Gentiles nor of Samaritans, but rather to the lost house of Israel? Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. Why? At the time when Jesus spoke, according to the opponents, the house of Israel was dwelling in Ireland and Scotland. So how could they go into the house of Israel? That quoted passage of Scripture, all of them that I just gave you, are in themselves, ladies and gentlemen, sufficient to knock the foundation from under the entire Mormon as well as Anglo-Israel deductions concerning remote descendants of so-called lost tribes upon whom the Lord God should still look as upon his ancient Israel. There were no lost tribes. It should be borne in mind that the group that returned from Judah and Benjamin was a small minority, as well as those who returned from among the 10 tribes. But these minorities are called Israel and the Jews. Those that remained dropped out of the ranks, intermarried, and were amalgamated among the nations. It would then be as logical and scriptural to speak of the lost tribes of Judah and Benjamin as it is to refer to the lost 10 tribes, but not more so. If you even understand this at all, and I hope that you do, it might save you a lot of pain and heartache someday. Having thus rejected the foundation upon which this structure rests, let's continue and trace to what fictitious and fantastic ideas this ill-based theory has given birth. Let us consider the things of which Mr. Reader Harris wrote, and he generally wrote the foundation upon which all the rest of it rose up. He said, the objection may again be raised that this is all very wonderful, but that it rests to a large extent upon tradition. Tradition, however, is the basis of all earlier history, end quote. If that were true, we would never know the true history of the world. Among these wonderful traditions, then, we meet with the following. Not as though the British Israelites abandoned Scripture for tradition, but they take such Scripture passages as refer to pre- or post-exilic conditions of Israel and apply them without further ado to where they fit in with tradition, ladies and gentlemen. Israel was to become a company of nations. God said to Jacob, Joseph was to become a fruitful bough, his branches run over the wall. Jacob added upon his deathbed. Israel was to be a maritime nation. I will set his hand also on the sea, Psalm 89. He was to possess the isles of the sea. Isaiah chapter 24, verse 15, 41, verse 1, and Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 10. So with the fiction of the lost tribes roaming the earth, and with the centuries to work with, the British Israelists moved the descendants of the lost tribes all over the map as the men upon a chessboard are moved. His seed shall become a multitude of nations, said Jacob of Manasseh in Genesis 49:19. It will at once be seen that this eminently fits that modern melting pot, the USA. Does it not? Well, the principle of British Israelism, exegesis is to follow the pattern of history. But you could take several nations through history and make them fit into this pattern. Depending upon who you are and what your agenda is, many different nations could make these same claims with no problem whatsoever. When certain features are predicted concerning Israel, look for the nation exhibiting those features, and presto magico, you have found the lost tribes. While most British Israelists place the lost tribes in Ireland and Scotland, the Mormon Church places them in America with the American Indians, or I should say the Native Americans. For the term Indian came from a misconception that they had discovered the far eastern country of India, which in fact they had not done. For instance, Israel was to be a Sabbath-keeping nation. That was to be a sign between me and you throughout your generations. Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. Great Britain, with its erstwhile 60 colonies in the United States of America, they say, alone have observed the Christian Sabbath, as over against the so-called continental Sabbath. Great Britain and the United States of America are Israel, and it's not true. You see, because God's Sabbath is the first day, from sunset on Friday night until sunset on Saturday. So this is a lie. Great Britain and the United States of America have never kept the Sabbath in their histories. They keep Sunday. Or excuse me, the Sabbath is the seventh day, which is sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. Great Britain and the United States of America have kept the first day, Sunday, the venerable day of the worship of the sun from the old pagan religions. And how did that come about? Very simply, when the Catholic Church and the Pope ruled the known world at that time, the Pope changed God's 10 commandments as if he were God and made the day of worship Sunday to appease the worshipers of the sun, which he wished to bring into the fold of the Catholic Church. You've all been deluded. You're so deluded, you're so far out in left field, you don't even know what you are. You don't know who you are, and you don't even know why. You follow blindly these people who stand behind pulpits and lie to you day to day to day to day to day and night to night to night to night, as surely as the sun sets and rises again every morning. And why do you do that? Why do you become pawns in their agenda to enslave you? Because that is exactly where it's leading. It was also said of Israel, "Thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow." Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 12. And we see that Great Britain and the USA have become the greatest moneylenders among the nations. That's what they say. That's what they tell you. But they don't tell you that the United States has become the biggest debtor nation that has ever existed in the history of the world and cannot possibly fulfill this prophecy. Where are your minds? What has happened between your ears to make your brain turn to mush at the mouths of these liars? Why do you grovel at their feet and accept these scraps of baloney? that they're feeding you with. Your spirits are starving for the truth, and that's why you're so unhappy. Because generally you find unhappy people flocking to these religions because it promises them that they will be the great of the world. It holds out to dissatisfied, unhappy, disaffected people the promise that they will be the kings of the world, the master race. They will inherit the kingdom of God. And they might, but not this way, because in this way they are following a lie. These people get up and tell you, thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow, and that is why you are Israel. Many of you really looked at the situation and found out that this is just not true. We are the greatest debtor nation in the world. The American people owe more money than any other people upon the face of this earth and could not be Israel according to that prophecy in a million years. Similarly, Isaiah predicted that Israel would be an undefeated people. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17, chapter 41, verse 10. But what of the United States? Isaiah prophesied that part of Israel was to split off from the mother country. Chapter 49, verses 19 and 20. Besides, already Jacob had predicted that while Ephraim was to be the greater, Manasseh also was to become a great people. Where, exclaimed the British Israelists rhetorically, are the descendants of Manasseh? And the answer is, in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 20, we find these words, the place is too strait for me. Give me place that I may dwell. Therefore, according to these people, the descendants of Manasseh must be a great people. And, quote, many students of Scripture believe that in the United States of America we find the branch of Joseph that was to run over the wall. Manasseh was to be the 13th tribe, and the number 13 plays an important part in much that pertains to the United States of America. But is that true? If America split off from the mother country, and the mother country was to be the greater, then how is it that we are greater than Great Britain today and have been for many years? In fact, we saved their butts in World War II. Again, we cannot be what this prophecy claims. Or I should say, what the British Israelists claim we are according to this prophecy. It just is not so. And why does the number 13 play so much of a part in American history? Because our founding fathers believed a lot of this. Sir Francis Bacon believed a lot of this. In establishing the United States of America, our founding fathers laid the blueprint for the New World Order. Washington, D.C. was built and laid out according to the Masonic blueprint of a temple of the mystery religion of Babylon. It's all there. In the dome of the Capitol building, you can see the apotheosis of George Washington as he rides in the chariot of the sun as Apollo across the sky, surrounded by all of the old gods of the Roman pantheon. Our original flag had 13 stars for the 13 states. 13 letters make up the American slogan, E pluribus unum. The American dollar contains 13 stars and 13 letters on the scroll. The eagle on the reversed side is 13 wing feathers, 13 tail feathers, 13 arrowheads, 13 horizontal stripes, and 13 parallel lines. Ergo, for those of you who don't know Latin, that means therefore, the original white population, notice the word white, of the United States of America came from England, but the destiny shapers of America failed to advise us how, in the process of crossing the Atlantic, these Ephraimites changed into children of Manasseh. That's a killer. That is a real killer. And we'll continue this, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night. And believe me, my goal is to educate you, wake you up, take you out of deception and slavery, not to hurt you. And I hope that you understand that. I hope sincerely that you all understand what this is all about. And if you're involved in this, exactly what it is that you are involved in. Many of you believe that you are fighting the New World Order from this religion, when in fact you are bringing it into being. There are two factions. British Israelism, made up of Zionism, British Freemasonry, and the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the United States. And the other side, the other faction, International Socialism, French Freemasonry, and where they can get along, the communists of the world. That is why President Clinton is always under attack by the British press. Because he is on the other side. Good night, and God bless you all. The Vatican and the Catholic Church are solidly on the side with Bill Clinton, French Freemasonry, and International Socialism. Always have been.
You're listening to The Hour of the Time. I'm Pooh.
And I'm William Cooper.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll be in to tuck you in later.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Ladies and gentlemen, some incredible things are happening. On my answering machine today, when I got back from the office, was a message from someone I haven't heard from in a long, long time. And he just left a very short message, no phone number, no way to get in touch with him, anything, and said that he would be contacting me. It was Billy Goodman. I couldn't believe it after all this time. So anyway, I hope he does get back in contact with me because I really like him an awful lot. And number two is I received a postcard today from, well, I don't know from what. Most likely from someone who doesn't really understand this broadcast and has not been listening for any appreciable amount of time. For he said, and I quote, "In the last few weeks, your show, The Hour of the Time, sucks. You've really gone downhill." And then he says the reason that it sucks is because I don't have Jordan Maxwell on, or Kathy O'Brien, or I don't do the Mark Hornkey thing, which is 95% lies, 5% true. And so I want to just set that record straight, because I know that a lot of you new listeners don't understand that there are agendas being served. Quite a few agendas. On this broadcast, the purpose is to reveal the truth, to dig up the truth, no matter who it hurts or helps, even if it hurts me, even if it hurts you, even if it hurts your church, even if it hurts Bill Clinton, even if it hurts my own mother. If we're living a life of deception and lies, we're not living at all. Instead, we are puppets being manipulated by those who control those lies to serve their own agendas. So we don't do those things on this broadcast. And for most of you new listeners, you just don't understand at all that most of what's being aired on all of these other broadcasts, these so-called Patriot broadcasts, were aired on this broadcast years ago. This was the first radio broadcast ever to have Jordan Maxwell as a guest. I had him on this broadcast 3 years ago. But that was when he was trying to educate people about the deception of the priesthood of all different religions. Something has happened between then and now. He is now on a crusade to destroy Christianity. If he had his way, he would take away your right to even consider being a Christian. And he would do away with all Christians. And those of you who have been listening to him lately, you can hear that. See, when he was on this broadcast 3 years ago, he was educating. He was talking about what he had learned in his research about religion and about the pagan religions and Christianity and how the two had been merged in the early days of the Christian church. And when he was doing that, it was in line with what this broadcast is all about. So he was a guest on here. He's not doing that now. He's venom in his heart. He's out to hurt people. And he has an agenda, which is to destroy an entire religion. This broadcast is about revealing the truth to you, but not destroying you or your religion or any organization you belong to. We don't even want to destroy you if you're trying to create world government and destroy us. What we want to do is open your eyes so that you'll stop doing that. You can still believe in your church, still belong to your organization. And if after you've heard the truth about all these things, you still want to believe in that, even though that you know it's not true, it's okay with us, because we believe here on the hour of the time, in the intelligence service, in the Kaji News service, with Veritas, everything that I am connected with, we believe in freedom. Real freedom for all people, of all races, of all religions, of all ancestral origins. And if we reveal the truth to you and you don't like it, you don't want to listen to it, or you think it's not the truth, we're not going to bother you, and we're not going to set out to destroy you. We've done our job. We've given you what we have documented, or what we believe in our heart, and can generally prove is the truth. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the truth is elusive. So that it might open your eyes, and so that you might quit being manipulated and become a real free, maybe for the first time in your whole life, free person. I would fight and die so that you can have that freedom. So that you could worship at the altar of your choice, believe whatever you want, have the freedom of speech, have all of the protections of our natural rights guaranteed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's what this broadcast is all about. Most people don't understand freedom. You see, to most people, even most people listening to this broadcast as I speak, freedom means only that I can do and say what I want if it agrees with what you believe or with what you want me to say and do. But you see, real freedom is this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm free to do anything I want, period. Makes no difference. As long as I do not hurt the person or property of any other human being or break the law. And the law is created by the society in which we live. If we don't like the law, there are means to change those laws. And if we can't change those laws, it means the majority of the people in that society believe that the law is correct and true and good and therefore should not be changed. That's why they're having such a hard problem getting the guns out of the American people's hands, is because the American people don't buy that jive. They know that when they give up their guns, they're going to be slaves. They're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. You see, if you send $1 in a self-addressed stamped business-size envelope, we'll send you a tape list. And you'll see that almost everything that's being discussed on any radio program in the entire country has already been covered on this broadcast years ago. And what we're covering now, the exposure of the lie of the master race of British Israelism, has never been exposed on any radio broadcast ever in the history of the world. Period. And yet you're ignoring that and sending me a postcard because you want to hear Kathy O'Brien. Kathy O'Brien is a liar. Barefaced, unmitigated, unabashed, unashamed liar. She has an agenda. Now, she says that she's never been able to sue the United States government because the suit is blocked by the National Security Act, and the courts ruled that she cannot bring suit because of the National Security Act. She's a liar. You see, Kathy O'Brien has never brought suit against anybody, not the United States government, not anybody. And she will not bring suit against me because I can prove in 3 seconds flat in any courtroom in this country that she's a liar. And there's no veil of national security here. So if Kathy O'Brien is telling the truth, she's going to sue me tomorrow. I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, she will not sue me. She has never sued the United States government. Her whole story is a concoction, a barefaced lie. Yes, there is documentation that proves mind control experimentation, some of it absolutely horrible, beyond belief. And it's all been documented on this broadcast years ago and in my book, Behold a Pale Horse, before Kathy O'Brien or anybody else ever came on the scene. And that includes her sidekick. They claim they have thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of documentation, yet they will not release that documentation to anybody. They just give you a little bit. What is the little bit they give you? The same little bit that people have always had, that have studied mind control for many, many years. The same information that I've revealed to you on this broadcast and many others have revealed in their books and on broadcasts about mind control. Kathy O'Brien is an unmitigated, barefaced, unabashed, unashamed liar. Does everybody understand what I'm telling you? People don't get in the White House, ladies and gentlemen, if they have sex slaves, and especially if they bring those sex slaves to the White House. And if they do, they do not discuss national or international policy or the plans for the New World Order or anything else in front of their sex slaves. Because there's always somebody who's ready and willing to get a hold of that information and expose it and destroy them. And I don't care if they're liberal, if they're Republican, if they're Democrat, if they're right-wing, if they're left-wing, if they're communist, if they're anarchy, whatever they are. Bill Clinton has the reins on the power in this country. Hasn't stopped anybody from exposing his sexual liaisons, ladies and gentlemen. These people are not fools. They're very smart, very intelligent, very slick. And they don't get to the White House, or they don't get to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives, or the leader of the majority of the Senate, or anything else, because they have sex slaves, and they discuss how they're going to bring the New World Order into being in front of these sex slaves. Not only that, but common sense ought to tell you that if Kathy O'Brien was sexually abused, molested, used as a sex slave, and made to do every perverted thing in the entire world with every president since Nixon, the entire upper half of the Senate and the House of Representatives, every leadership and famous person that's ever lived, don't you think that she would show a little bit of that wear and tear? But she doesn't. And when you hear her talk, she doesn't even show any emotional disturbance whatsoever. No anger, not upset, nothing. And I just wonder how it is that there are so many fools out there in radio land that are so willing to believe all this utter, total crap. You see, I called in one night when she was spouting her lies, and I just asked one question. Can you prove that you were ever in your life in the White House? There was dead silence, ladies and gentlemen. And all of a sudden, she started giggling and stuttering. She couldn't come up with an answer. Then Mark Phillips, her partner there, said, well, you know that these people are crooks and there's nothing beyond their capabilities. And then, bang, disconnected. And that's okay. Any radio broadcast has the right to disconnect anyone they want. Lord knows I do it enough here. But I don't do it because someone asks a question. I do it because they're stupid or exceptionally rude or antagonistic. As long as someone is intelligent, can present a legitimate argument, I'll talk to them all night. Or at least a reasonable amount of time so that other people are able to get on the broadcast. I was cut off because there was no answer to my question. And there never will be because it's a lie. You can take her book and pick it apart piece by piece. It is a conglomeration of lies. I don't know what Mark Phillips' story is. I don't know why he's hooked up with Kathy O'Brien. But I will tell you this. Kathy O'Brien is a liar. She's a scam. She has an agenda. And don't you ever forget it. Tonight we're going to finish up with the destiny of America. Well, I hope you like that Celtic music, where British Israelism has its roots in the old Celtic and Druidic religions, the pagan religions of the Anglo-Saxon and Teuton regions of Europe. Nobody ever heard of the word Aryan. They were the Teutonic tribes, the Celts. They were the Gauls. They were the Druids. Until Helena Blavatsky came along and connected these tribes to a supposed Eastern race called the Aryans. Supposedly the Indian, not the Indian of the United States or of the American continents, but the Indian of India, whom, ladies and gentlemen, are not white. But yet the Aryans were supposed to be a pure white race, superior to all other races, that founded, created, and nourished civilization. And none of it is true. It's a heady offering for anyone who is willing to believe it, for anyone who is so insecure within themselves that they need desperately for someone to tell them that they're worth something, worth more than anyone else, that they are elevated indeed above all other races and peoples of the earth, and that they are truly the master race who have been promised to inherit the world. Isn't that something? It's the same heady attraction of the mystery religions of Babylon, the secret societies, the so-called fraternal organizations, which hold out the promise of the revelation of the secret if you climb high enough in the degrees of initiation. A secret that makes you different from all of the men and women on this earth. that hold out the promise that you will be a member of the truly elect, the holders of this secret, the guardians, indeed, of the secrets of the ages. That you will be a part of a brotherhood that will promise you wealth and material satisfaction and will take care of you. And if you're in legal problems and you go before a judge who is also a member of this brotherhood and you give the secret sign, you will prevail against your enemies in that courtroom. And it's all true. Except for one thing. Actually, two. There is no secret except the secret of how to control others through the promise of a secret. And there are no elite. There is no superior race. Period. Period. End of subject. It is a scam, a lie. Now, on Friday night, you heard me reveal the proofs of all of this, and those proofs are undeniable. Can't even argue with them. Not for a second. All you can do, if you want to hold on to these imagined delusions of grandeur, is to dismiss them arbitrarily and continue to quote the old deceptions. And many people will do that. For some people are so ingrained in this doctrine and so established in the community of those who believe in this doctrine that for them to stand up and admit that they were wrong and to reject it outright would mean terrible consequences. They would lose most or all of their friends. They would be ostracized by the community. They would be excommunicated by the church. If they owned or operated a business, they would lose their business and their family would be put in the poorhouse or out in the street. And you all know what I'm talking about because you've all seen it happen over and over and over again. And you would be hounded and persecuted by the priests and the elders of these religions until you had to flee utterly for your very life and your very existence. And some who have found themselves in this situation have even been murdered over the years because they refused to flee, refused to back down, and refused to recant their rejection. The original population of this country, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not talking about the Native Americans who were already here. I'm talking about the immigrants from the very first. The original population of this country came from England, indeed from this whole continent came from England, later from France. The destiny shapers of America failed to advise us, ladies and gentlemen, how in this process, if these are lost tribes that they're talking about, how in this process of crossing the Atlantic, the Ephraimites changed into children of Manasseh. How did that happen? Oh, well, some say that there were 12 original tribes of Israel. Many of them lost tribes, which isn't true, and the Bible substantiates that they were never lost. Never, ever, not once. But that Manasseh is the 13th. Well, if there are only 12 original tribes, where does this 13th come from? Anybody have an answer to that? Because these same people claim that the formation of the state of Israel fulfills the prophecy of all of Israel coming together again into a nation. Therefore, Manasseh cannot be the reformed tribes of Israel, whether lost or not. So what is this all about? It's about a deception of such a magnitude, ladies and gentlemen, that without even knowing it, many people who claim to be patriots and who claim to be against the New World Order actually helping it come about through this deception of the mystery religion of Babylon and International Zionism, which have combined their forces. And folks, Zionism is not Judaism. So don't go blaming it on the Jews. Many Jews are Zionists. Many Jews are not Zionists and reject it outright. And I hope you understand that. Any time that you begin to blame one people, one race, one group for all your problems, you are fitting in to the deception of divide and conquer and destroy the weakness of that action. They have succeeded in splitting this country into so many groups, so many religions, so many organizations, so many this, so many that. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you really want to know the truth, there is very little of America as it has ever been known to be left, if any at all. And there's going to be an ultimate conflict, whether it be peaceful or with the force of arms, depends upon how many people we are able to awaken in order to form a political consensus that will take the hands out of these manipulating power grabbers so that they have to drop the power into our hands and let us restore freedom to all peoples. There is, of course, a great deal more, and it's extremely interesting study, an interesting talk, conversation, if you can converse with someone who is intelligent enough to be able to converse, rather than argue dogma. But it is all founded upon the same arbitrary method, ladies and gentlemen, and all of this pseudo-exegesis is backed up by equally precarious tradition, formed simply by taking a verse and making it fit somewhere. Or if you can't make that verse fit somewhere, you take a historical event and find the verse that will fit it, taken out of context and without any attention to any other verse, tracts, chapters, whatever. So beginning with Esdras in his second book in the Apocrypha, we know that, quote, "The 10 tribes took this counsel among themselves that they should leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country, that there they might keep their law which they had never kept in their own land. And they passed by the way of the Euphrates." End quote. This is confirmed, folks, by Josephus, who wrote AD 70, quote, "The 10 tribes are now beyond the Euphrates and are an immense multitude." End quote. What became of them? 10 tribes? Well, according to these British Israelites, there were 12 tribes. But when you're talking about the 12 tribes, then Manasseh becoming the 13th, what you're doing is really recounting the story of the zodiac and the sun, the 12 houses and the sun, the 12 disciples and Jesus. The same old story throughout the history of the world. British Israelites claim they have the answer. Past old gravestones in the Crimea and a town on the Danube near the Black Sea called Isaka, quote, "evidently an Israelitish name," end quote. Evidently? What do you mean evidently? Prove it! And they can't. They trace these tribes to Scandinavia and to Western Europe. The Saxons, having come from the Black Sea, captured England from the original Britons and divided the country into sections whose names all remind us of God's promise. In Isaac shall thy seed be called, Genesis chapter 21, verse 12. For they are Sussex or South Saxon, Essex or East Saxon, Middlesex, etc. And this is all what they say. It's not really what happened in history. There is an Irish tradition that the prophet Jeremiah escaped from Egypt with a daughter of Zedekiah, the last, and by the way, illegally appointed king of Judah. These two first reached Spain and later Ireland. They say, here this female descendant of David, entitled to David's throne only by favor of Nebuchadnezzar, married an Irish tribal chief or king between BC 580 and 565. From then on, the line of David is continued, first in Ireland, then in Scotland, and England. And at the same time, they have this other story, that Joseph of Arimathea have this other story that says the same thing with different names. That Joseph of Arimathea took Mary of Magdalene, who was really, according to this story, the wife of Jesus, and her children, the children of Jesus, to Scotland and Ireland. And from there arose the Merovingian line of kings, descended from the house of David, because Jesus, as the Bible says, was a descendant of the house of David. And so his progeny would also be. Think about that. How in the world did they get people to believe all of this? For there is no truth at all for any of it, ladies and gentlemen. This feat, however, was by no means the only accomplishment of the aged prophet Jeremiah. We're talking about the first story here. He also succeeded in taking with him the stone of destiny. This is the stone I've talked to you about from the beginning. All through the mystery schools, we've talked about this stone. The Queen of England sits upon the stone, which rests beneath her throne. He succeeded in taking with him the stone of destiny. It should be borne in mind, namely, that Jacob, when departing from Bethel, had taken with him the stone which he had used for a pillow as a token of the divine presence, and on his deathbed had referred to it, when, according to Genesis chapter 49, verse 24, he had said concerning Joseph, "From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel." This same stone went with the Israelites into the wilderness. Paul referred to it in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4. The rock followed them. But just look that up in its context and you'll see it does not mean what they say it means. And can you remember in the New Testament, Jesus said, "Upon this rock I found my church"? Same stone, and he wasn't talking about Peter. And I know that many of you don't understand. According to the British Israelists, Jeremiah then took this stone with him, and it became the coronation stone of the kings of Argyle, then of the kings of Scotland, and until recently of the kings of England. But you see, this is not an unbroken line of ancestry. This is a line of conquest. The stone did not pass through these hands. The stone that they're talking about in real history, not the history of the deception that the British Israelists teach, but real history, the stone did not pass through these hands by blood, but by conquest. So that the hands in whom this stone now rests is in no way related to the house of David, no matter how they may falsify their lineage. And believe me, so many lineages of bloodlines are falsified today to connect somebody with someone whom they were never related to under any circumstances, and to bloodlines and through history that cannot even prove the existence of the people whom they claim they are related to. For instance, there is no historical proof whatsoever, other than the Bible says so, that a king named David ever lived upon the face of this earth. Recently, they found a rock somewhere on the side of a building that they dug up in an archaeological excavation, which had the name David carved on it, and they are now saying that that is the proof that King David was real. But it's not. It's just a rock with the name David carved on it. How many Davids do you think there have been throughout history? And what do you... well. I could go off into all kinds of little things, but let's not do that. This stone rested in Westminster Abbey. Small wonder the removal of this stone of Scone in December the 25th, 1950, caused so much consternation. You see, because today they claim that this Jacob's pillar is now the stone of Scone. There's about as much historical evidence for all of this as there is for the alleged story which claims that there is among Roman Catholic relics the stone upon which the rooster stood when he crowed at Peter's denial of his Lord, or for that matter, for the feather that dropped from the wing of the angel Gabriel when he announced the Savior's birth to Mary. Much after the same fashion, ladies and gentlemen, great things were expected some years ago from the then Prince of Wales, one of whose name was David, and who reached the age of 30 years in 1924, would duplicate his ancestor, the original King David, and bring the world together and fulfill the prophecy with him sitting upon the throne. But Prince David, meanwhile, having become King Edward VIII, abdicated from the throne of Judah and Israel, British, in favor of the woman he loved. That's his exact words, quote, "the woman I love," end quote. And the Duchess of Windsor proved a spoke in the wheels of Anglo-Israelite exegesis. You can't look within the narrow confines of this brief 2 nights and the various other angles of the strange theory which is said before boasts at least 2 million adherents worldwide, such as the fact that anthropological and racial studies and comparisons have refuted the British Israel assertions concerning the racial peculiarities of the English and British as thoroughly as those of the Mormons, that the American Indians are the Lamanite seed of Jacob. It's all false, all a lie. And many people believe it, and that's why they call it religion. And I'm going to tell you right now that all religious beliefs are based upon an article of faith which cannot be proven to anyone, period. Many of them can be disproven, but none of them can be proven at all. If they could, it would be called science and not religion. So somewhere along the line, someone has convinced people to believe these things, and they have found it in their best interest to do so. And I find no fault with this. If they are going to church and doing good works and contributing their efforts to helping other people and truly worshiping their God, whoever they happens to be. But when they set out to become superior than the rest of us and enslave the rest of us in a new world totalitarian socialist order, that is where the line must be drawn, and these deceptions must be exposed, because no longer are they harmless, no longer are they exercising their right to practice their own religious beliefs, protected by the Constitution, but they are then infringing upon the rights protected by the Constitution and given to us by God of every other person upon the face of this earth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be allowed, at least by me. So again, I want to reiterate that by this little expose of Friday night and tonight, I'm not attempting to destroy your religion or tell you that you cannot worship that religion or that you should not worship that religion, but to reveal to you the deceptions that are practiced upon all of us by the priesthood, by the powers that be, the secret societies, forces within governments, in order to make us believe in certain things that will ensure our own enslavement. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you that all major organized religions today are involved in this deception. I don't care what you call that religion. I don't care what part of the world that religion exists at. I don't care who belongs to it. It is true. It is absolutely true. In Jesus' day, he would have called these manipulators, these deceivers, and these liars Pharisees. And he would have called this secret hidden power, the secret government, if you will, the Sanhedrin. For in those days, that was truly the power behind the throne. The power which the king dared not go against. Well, we can take calls until the end of the hour if you'd like. The number is 520-333-4578. That's 520-333-4578. While we're waiting, I'm going to give you the new address for the Research Center, for Veritas, for the Hour of the Time, for all of us, as a matter of fact. It's Harvest. If you're writing to Veritas, write to Veritas in care of Harvest, Harvest. P.O. Box 1970. That's P.O. Box 1970. Eager, spelled E-A-G-A-R. That's Eager, spelled E-A-G-A-R, Arizona, 85925. Once again, the zip is 85925. The entire address is whoever you're writing to. If you're writing to me, it's William Cooper in care of Harvest. If you're writing to the Intelligence Service, it's the Intelligence Service in care of Harvest. If you have a question about an order, write to Annie in care of Harvest. If you're writing to Veritas, write to Veritas in care of Harvest. P.O. Box 1970, Eager, spelled E-A-G-A-R, Arizona, 85925. If you need to call Veritas about a subscription, about submitting an article, about anything about Veritas, this is the only number that you can call. If you call any other number, you're not going to get any help, and you're just going to be told that you have to call this number. The number is 520-333-5661. That's 520-333-5661. 5661. If you're calling for any other reason, also that number that I just gave you is the fax for all of us. If you want to send a fax to any of us, that's the number. You can only call that number and talk to people about Veritas, nothing else. And you can't talk about Veritas on any other number that I'm going to give you. But if you want to fax to any of us, that's the number that you must fax to, and it will automatically be switched to the fax when the phone picks up and hears the fax tone. So that's 520-333-5661. If you want to talk to me or discuss CAGI business or intelligence service or orders or anything like that at the hour of the time, you call 520-333-5691. That's 520-333-5691. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello. My name is Scott. I'm calling from Daytona Beach, Florida.
Hello, Scott.
First I want to say that I agree thoroughly with what you said about Kathy O'Brien and that Maxwell. As a matter of fact, I even wrote a letter to a program that was having Kathy O'Brien on quite a bit and said almost verbatim what you said on the air. You can tell by the way the woman talks that she's lying, because in fact, if she'd had the experiences that she had, then why does she spend so much time talking about things that are not part of that experience, like the New World Order and brainwashing techniques? She wouldn't know those things.
That's correct.
Now, and as far as Maxwell, he pretends to know more than he does, because I'm a student of ancient languages.
That's also correct. And you're very astute for recognizing that.
Yeah, he's claimed some etymologies that are utterly false.
Yes.
Most people would never know that. However, I would like to point out some errors that you've made in your program tonight. Now, at the beginning of the program, you identified Anglo-Saxon with Celtic, and of course those are two different groups.
No. I mentioned several groups. I mentioned the Teutonic tribes, the Celts, and the Druids, and the Gauls.
Okay,
They all make up what are known today as the Anglo-Aryan British Israelite conglomeration of races. Of course, Japan wasn't included in there, which the British Israelites do include Japan as a part of their master race.
Okay, well, I'll put that aside for the second.
I can't, because it's pure bullshit and it's part of their dogma. You can't put it aside.
Something else first, all right?
Go ahead.
Now,
But your assertion that I said that what you said is not true. I included all of those tribes and ancient religions that are the main players in my opening remarks.
Well, now I have studied Sanskrit, and I am aware of the fact that Aaron, which is of course the Gaelic name for Ireland, is etymologically related.
Aaron is not the Gaelic name for Ireland.
I just looked it up in the dictionary.
Aaron is not the Gaelic name for Ireland. Aaron in the Hebrew tongue literally means the priesthood. Has nothing to do with Ireland.
Well, that's probably a completely different word. I just looked it up in the dictionary.
No, it's not a different word. I've been all through this many different times. But go ahead and finish your...
Professor of Sanskrit told me that Aaron, or Air, which is a different version of it, is etymologically related to the word Arya and also to Iran. They're all the same root, right? And so, in fact, the Aryans of India are related to the Aryans of Europe. And you say that they look completely different. Well, yes, a lot of them do because of racial mixture. But if you look especially at a lot of the people from Punjab, there's a television program. I was in Toronto. They have a lot of multicultural programming on television. One of the programs on is a Punjabi program, and the woman that hosts it is the most Nordic-looking woman you would ever want to see. I think that's...
Well, now, wait a minute. That's like saying that in England, there's someone hosting an English program who looks like they came from India. How do you know what her ancestral origin is?
Well,
do you know what her ancestral origin is?
I think it would be highly...
No, wait a minute. Do you know what her ancestral origin is? You're citing her as proof.
All right. Okay. Well, okay. Well, just for argument, I'll say, okay, that's only one example. But
No. Good night. You see, folks, it never fails. When it comes down to really intelligently debating the issue, they can't. They fall back on the most unbelievable bullshit that I've ever heard in my life. Saw somebody on television in India who had blonde hair and blue eyes, and that's proof. Bullshit! Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, Mr. Cooper. Talk about British Israelism, and I think you're trying to make a glancing hit on identity.
No, I'm not trying to make a glancing hit. Oh, wait a minute. We just lost the satellite, so we got to get back on satellite, folks. Hold on. Are we on, Annie? Well, it's just like always, folks. When we're talking about something that really gets to this New World Order crowd, they knock us off the satellite. And that's what happened tonight. No, I'm not trying to make a roundabout hit on Christian identity. I'm making a direct hit on Christian identity. I don't mince words, and I don't sneak around by the back door.
And also, you don't look at history.
I look exactly at history. I cited history tonight many, many times. I cited the proof. Now, argue the proof. Argue intellectually the points of proof, if you can.
By faith, Mr. Cooper, or by sight?
Pardon?
You claim to be a Christian. Do you live by faith or by sight?
What are you talking about? How many different churches of Christianity are there?
Well, there are many.
How many?
I have no idea.
That's what I thought. How many of them are there that are different, that believe that they are the only ones in this world that are right?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Every one of them do.
Here's what history.
There are thousands.
Our heritage.
Well, let me tell you something. There are thousands of these splinter groups of Christianity, all teaching a different dogma, a different interpretation of scriptures, all claiming that they are 100% right.
They have no historical record to fall back on.
What are you talking about? Every one of them can cite historical record. What historical record can you cite?
Well, where the 10 tribes of Israel migrated from Assyria when they were in captivity. Migrated eastward or westward.
Migrated westward?
Correct.
Where is the Euphrates from Israel?
I'm not speaking about Israel.
Where is the Euphrates from Israel? That's where they started from when they migrated.
Captivity in Assyria.
Good night. Here's another guy that doesn't know his history. They migrated from the Middle Eastern Israel, Palestine area, crossed the Euphrates. It wasn't west, my friend. It was east. Of course, you wouldn't know that because you're blindly parroting what you've been taught. You have no conception. You probably never even looked at a map of the Middle East. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hello, Bill. This is Fred from Fresno. I'm calling from KDNO Country.
Hi, Fred.
I read your book.
Richard Palmquist, one of my favorite people.
Yes, he is.
A man with guts.
Yes, he is. I had a question about your book that I was a little curious about, Operation Rainbow, where you spoke of the supposed UFO beings having videotaped the crucifixion of...
No. What I said is I saw documents that said that these things happened. And Project Rainbow was supposedly an experiment that had nothing to do with what you're talking about. Was the United States government experiment in time travel, and I have no idea whether it was actually ever performed, whether it was successful, or whether it failed.
And there was no more information on it then?
Well, there may be, but I never saw it.
You never saw it?
No.
That was my question, Bill. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And that does it for tonight, folks. Well, maybe. No, I can't. We're just down to the wire, and we've got to, once again, we've got to go. Good night. And God bless each and every single one of you. There is no master race, ladies and gentlemen. only the human race. And the quicker you get that through your head, the quicker we will be able to leave peacefully all other people alone and enjoy life upon this earth and stop manipulating and stealing and taking freedom and enslaving. Don't buy into the deception. And the American Indians, ladies and gentlemen, are not Lamanites. If you don't believe me, ask them. They'll tell you.